Hello and welcome everyone back to another episode of
Not Fighting.
And as you can tell, we continue to kind of move things around in the room for every episode. For those that are just listening to the audio, you
can't tell.
Maybe you can. I don't know.
Maybe it's different because you don't have a puppy barking and causing problems.
Oh, well, not yet. You don't. We don't know what's going on in your life. It's not like we're spying on you.
No, we're not.
Anyways, the podcast, we actually are kind of getting back into the swing of things here a little bit, and I think that's sort of jiu-jitsu in general right now. People are trying to figure out how do we get back into the swing of, doing jiu-jitsu, and 2020 is going to be a weird year looking back.
It's so weird because, and right now, things are normal, but not really. So it's, I still feel, it still feels like we're all, kind of in limbo a little bit. Trying to move on with our lives and do what we need to do, but then also, I don't know.
Yeah, I think if you haven't gotten back to jiu-jitsu yet, it feels weird because you want to get back, and if you have, it kind of feels like, man, are the feds gonna jump in and bust us up, or are we gonna all get sick one day, or how dangerous is it?
There's so much unknown.
Yeah. Anyways, I know people are probably hit with pandemic, coronavirus related stuff all the time, so I don't mean to drag that into jiu-jitsu, but it is something that I think is, pertinent to, I don't know, just the jiu-jitsu experience right now, which is things are just different. And I think
it's a lot different. No tournaments, there's certain events, but I mean, even training, because it's for me, it's not different at the moment, really, but when I'm teaching my classes and that is different, because there's still a lot of people that are waiting to come back to kind of see what's going to happen with, the virus. But there's other people that are I don't care, I'm going full force, and then trying to maintain cleanliness at the gym, extra all these extra procedures we have in place. So it's weird, but also feels normal. I don't know how to explain it.
And I think, there's been a lot of folks that have had to sit out this time period.
Yeah.
And, then you got to motivate yourself and start coming back to jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
And, one of the things that you and I were talking about before this were just, how many people are going to tell themselves, well, I'm going to get back, but I'm going to wait till this. And it kind of spurred us talking about, what are all the different lies that people tell themselves in jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of different things that we will tell ourselves, or you hear people talking about, and for me, I'm you're trying to excuse something, a shortcoming, or a reason of why you don't want to do something, or why you do want to do something, So there's a lot of different things that people kind of, convince themselves of. And in jiu-jitsu, it's funny because you can kind of see through it, and because it's I've done that to myself before, or said that to myself before, or I know, you can kind of see the motivation behind it.
Yeah.
And this applies to, everyday life too, because I think there's a lot of lies that we tell ourselves on a regular basis to justify
Absolutely.
behaviors.
I don't think it's something that's unique to jiu-jitsu in that way, as you pointed out. But I do think that there are some ones. I think that one of the biggest keys into fixing things like that is to understand them. So sometimes I think people lie to themselves and they don't even realize that pattern in their life.
Yeah.
So there are some really common ones that I think we've all been guilty of, and I think that there's some ones that I've specifically identified. And so I thought it'd be fun if we kind of brought some of those out. Maybe it would be helpful.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be therapeutic, and then if nothing else,
what is something that that you've told, a lie you told yourself, just
me personally, I think one of the things you tell yourself a lot of times if you're gonna compete is whether you're putting in the amount of work that you need to compete, or you're not, and I think this probably leans more towards the not, you'll tell yourself, well, I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to have fun.
Yes.
And you do that so maybe you don't stress out, or you do it because you want to justify, like, well, you know what, I'm not going to train all that hard for this one. And me,
so it's like you have an excuse if you don't compete well. Like, I mean, well, I didn't really put that much into it anyway.
I'm just doing this one for fun, or I'm just trying to, so you can justify doing a tournament, maybe not putting in the work, or, justify, fighting, however. And the thing is, it's just for fun until you step out there, and then it's not for fun anymore. It's a tournament. You're competing.
I mean, competing is fun, but like when you're saying just for fun, it's like just like what's the word? Like it's like casual pickup game like type scenario where it's like I'm not putting too much weight in this. Like we'll see what happens. Like win or lose, no big deal. But the moment you step on the mat, you're like, no, like I want to win. Like I need to win, and then all of those things that you said or the lack of preparation, like you kind of regret.
It's like mountain climbing just for fun, where it's like, I mean, you can do it for fun, but it's serious too, because if you fall off a mountain, you're dead.
It's a true story.
And it's not to say like tournament is serious as climbing a mountain.
No.
But it is one of those things, me personally, anytime I've ever kind of like told that to myself and then not competed well, I'm always like, oh, I'm not going to care. I'm just doing this one for fun. And then I care the most immediately when I'm walking off.
Yes, immediately. It's like the instant regret of, and it's not even like, I don't know, because I think I tell myself lies too that I'm not prepared enough. And it's like, I'm training hard. I'm training hard like all the time. Like I really don't take a lot of breaks. The breaks that I take are more mental. Where it's like, oh, if I don't have to do that extra class or I don't have to do that extra workout. It's like, okay, because I'm not getting ready for something, but I'm still, working out and training like every day still. So it's just the intensity and like the mindset changes. And so I feel like if I didn't get into that mindset or I didn't I'm like, I'm not prepared enough. Like I didn't do enough for this. And you start thinking like, oh my gosh, like everybody else is like more prepared than me. And you start like, I don't know. I would like get in that like headspace of like talking myself. I don't know.
Demotivating
like,
yourself.
Demotivating myself. And I'm like, no, like I always put in the work. I always do enough. But I feel like if I'm not training every day to where I'm like, my body feels wrecked, like every night and every morning when I wake up, then I'm like, I didn't do enough.
I do think, we've talked about this before. You and I are both the types of people that we don't need external motivation. We're our own worst enemies when it comes to motivation.
Yeah.
But I will say that I think that a trap and a lie that people will tell themselves sometimes is this. Everybody else is more prepared and working harder than me, so I am not prepared. And I would say in jiu-jitsu, there's this, I would say, really common feeling of like, I always have to be doing more than probably what I need to because somebody else is willing to do that or somebody else is doing it. Yeah.
I think that's something, but I think that's like the athlete culture in general. It's like where you just like, because that whole mentality of I gotta outwork everybody, but it doesn't mean you have to do more. It means that you need to be smart about how you're preparing.
Yeah.
Because it's not just the physical aspect of preparation, like that's a big part of it, but mentally preparing yourself. So if you're lying to yourself about things, then how prepared are you?
Yeah, and I think, this one isn't one that I have had personally, or I don't think you have. I know you haven't, but I do see it really commonly, and it's among the disappearing blue belts primarily.
Yeah.
And that is like, I'm going to get back to jiu-jitsu, I just got to get in shape first.
Yes.
And it's like, I mean, I think we may have touched on this in another episode at some point, but this idea that like you can get in shape, I think we talked about it, like why people don't start.
Yeah.
But like people will use the same excuse that like, oh, I'm going to get in shape coming back to jiu-jitsu. That's two lies in my opinion.
Yes.
The lie that you're going to get back in shape, like.
Yes, because you're probably not.
And then you're going to come back to jiu-jitsu once you do.
Yes. And that is one that is definitely like, you hear a lot, and that it's just like, at that point, I'm not trying to like say, oh yeah, you should really come back, like, because it's like you already convinced yourself of these things, and there's no real point in like trying to convince you otherwise, because you're like, no, I'm gonna do it. Starting next week, I'm gonna start running. I'm start lifting again when I get strong, and then I'll be back. And it's like I see you do one workout, and then
it's like somebody saying
nothing else.
It's like somebody being like, listen, I am gonna get a job, but I'm just trying to save up some money first.
Yes.
It's not really like that.
I was like, I mean, I guess, but I had to think about it, so I don't know.
It's not like that, I don't think. But I will say this: I've never talked to somebody and then be like, "Hey, I'm gonna get back in shape and come back to jiu-jitsu." I'm like, "Great," and then next week they're like, "Guess what? I'm back. I'm in shape and I'm ready to do jiu-jitsu."
Yeah.
There's no amount of shape you can be in to like.
Anybody who tells me that, I usually just assume they're quitting jiu-jitsu for good.
Or have quit.
You're
officially done.
Yeah,
Great.
you're okay. We'll see you like once in a blue moon. You'll show up for an open mat and then like roll twice and be dying because you're like out of shape, and then.
I think that leads to the being in shape thing. I think has a nice correlation to something we've all told ourselves if you've ever tried to cut weight for a tournament, and that is, I'll just cut the weight the day before.
Yeah, I mean, I that's not me, because that would stress me out like mentally, and I don't need that kind of stress in my life. I would actually cut more weight than I needed to, just because I'm gonna be make sure I'm on weight. But I have seen this happen a lot, and these guys like, I'm gonna do before, and then they struggle, and maybe they do make the weight the day before, but they think it's the way that they're lying to themselves. They're like, oh, it's gonna be easy, and it's not gonna affect how I fight or compete.
It'll be better.
It's gonna be better because then I can like stay stronger through my whole like training camp and all that. And it's like, no. Now you just like did all these things that your body's not used to, like, and now you're gonna try and compete at the highest level.
It's like no. I'm trying to dial things in. I'm trying to maintain as much muscle mass and energy as possible, and it has nothing to do with the fact that like I'm gonna eat those Pop-Tarts.
Right.
And I think that like I see it all the time with guys who are like, "What's your weight?" And then this isn't a lie they tell themselves. Everybody knows how much they really weigh.
And this is a lie they tell people.
This is a lie they tell people. They're like, "Oh, like weight class is like 181. I'm like 183 or something.
Like
whatever."
add like at least 5 pounds to
and
that
so they're
number.
Like, cool, we're 188, and then to themselves they're like, it's not really a big deal because I just got to lose like 9 pounds. I can cut like 9 pounds of water.
Most of it's probably water weight.
Yeah.
Like I'm not just getting fat.
I ate some salty food the other day, so like I'm good.
Yes. So and then you show up and you not only did you weigh more than what you told everybody, but it's like it's really obvious because you're over your weight by like 3 pounds. Like and you were never 183, bro.
I think people always lie to themselves too about how much their gi and their belt weighs.
It's true. That's true.
It's like cool. I weigh whatever, and then like belt. Gi, all that stuff, that's like 1.8 pounds or something, right? And like 1.8 pounds? Like, are you painting it on?
I always give myself 5 pounds for my gi, even though it does not weigh that much, but I just give it to myself.
I think somebody used to market a gi and a belt, and they said it was like 3.5 pounds. So in my mind, it's always been 3.5 pounds, but it's always a little bit more than that, I feel like.
I don't know. I think around 3 pounds.
I guess for women it'd be a little bit smaller, right?
It depends on how big you are, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's true too. Yeah.
What size is your gi?
Isn't that well, I guess percentage wise, I don't know. That's math.
Yeah, you're gonna go somewhere that you're not ready for.
No, I'm not ready to break down the math with you guys about weights and percentages. No, I think that's a really common one. A lot of them are related to competition because I think people get very anxious about that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times in jiu-jitsu, people will lie to themselves about how well they're doing or I think about their progress.
Yeah, there's a lot of funny things that you see people and this is something that's like we've talked about, like people like lying to themselves about how well they did against a certain individual in the training, which it's like, man, like training is training. So it's like any given day, you know, anything can happen. But to think that like what is funny to me is when people are reminding themselves about how well they're doing when and not realizing that the other person they were sparring against was like taking it easy on them or letting them work stuff or whatever. And so I think that's like that one's kind of hilarious to me.
You and I talked about this the other day when we were on our way home from practice in the car, and all cards on the table. This low key drives me crazy, but it's when you're rolling with somebody as a black belt, and you may be kind of backing off in the training with them or something like that, maybe because they're a lower belt or because whatever reason. And then, they try to go for like an ankle lock or something like that. And you defend it, whatever. And then afterwards, they're like, how close was that ankle lock? And it's one of those things that's like, it's not about asking the question. It's more about like, you're asking somebody that is basically backing off. And then you try to put a submission on and they defend it. And then you want to be like, it was pretty close.
That's pretty close. It's like, yeah, like, number one, if I was trying my hardest, you would never got to the position. And number two, like, no, did I even flinch?
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where it's like somebody is only looking at themselves from a, like, this is the best possible spin that I can put on something. And it's not to say that one scenario is the example.
I think the thing is, like, most people... Like for me, this is how I do it. If I'm training with somebody and like even a lower belt, like lower belts or whomever, and they had a submission that was like really close, but I barely escaped or something, I'm gonna let them know. I'm like, dude, that was really close. Like I was freaking out for a second, or because I don't have an ego to like say like, oh, like no, you weren't even, kind of close. Like I was cool the whole time. Like no, like there's things I'm like, hey, props, like don't. Just because I got out of that time, like, don't not go for it again because you were close.
Yeah.
Like I was training with somebody yesterday, and I put them in a triangle. Like it was one of the guys. They were bigger than me, but like I put them in a triangle. I was finishing like the TP triangle style, and I had thought that they like kind of. I was like, did they go out? Because I was like, man, they felt kind of like not limp, but like stop moving as much.
Like the politically correct way of saying you choke somebody out.
But
they stopped moving as much.
But no, but then then I like their head moved just a bit, and so I was like, oh no, and because I think I like let it like loosened up for a second because I was like trying to figure out are they asleep, and then
oh no, he did.
And then I let go, and I was just like, I'm gonna switch to something else. Like I'm like, they're not gonna tap to this, and I'm just gonna burn myself out. And then after the training, he was like, I think I slept a little bit there. And I was like, yeah, I thought you did too. It was like a flash, like lights go out, I give him a little space, and he comes right back.
And I think that there's this like juxtaposition, and it's 100%, to the theme of this, which is lies that we tell ourselves, and that is. It's one thing to, I was telling you, like, I think maybe yesterday, like, there was a brown belt I used to train with. I was a blue belt, and I loved training with him. He beat me in just about everything, but I would live for whenever I would get, like, a sweep or get out of something, And it's because those were what I was working on. So whenever I walked away from those roles, I wouldn't tell myself, like, man, you see me get that sweep, I'm doing pretty good with those sweeps. I was like, man, I got that sweep, and that's what I was happy about because that's what I was working on. But I enjoyed the experience. And I think it's a completely different thing whenever you walk away from that and you ignore all the terrible things that happened in that, and you're like, I was hanging in there. I got a sweep, and then like I got out of some stuff.
Like I was in and out of like 12 submissions.
It was
the whole time, but like they couldn't tap me. Like,
and I think even now, like I'll train with certain guys, and all things will be competitive, but I'll also understand the moments whenever, like I'll have a historical record too of being like, Felipe Andrew is somebody that had a chance to train with a lot. He's he's unbelievable, one of the best
Yeah.
guys in the world right now. And there'll be times whenever we'll roll where he can be so overwhelming because of how good he is.
Yeah.
But it's not like that all the time when we're training. So
No.
I don't walk away from when he's not just like giving 110%, thinking to myself, oh, now I'm getting a lot better. Look how much better I'm doing here or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something you have to be really wary of falling into that trap.
Yeah, I think that that's like really important is like just to be honest with yourself about, you know, how you're doing. I think one of the other things that people will say is like, well, that guy's just stronger than me. Like, they'll just do that. Or that person's just stronger than me. So that's why that happened, you know. And as a female, there are training with like a lot of male black belts. Like, sometimes that's the case. Like, they just muscled their way out of it. And they were just strong, like just stronger than me in a certain position. But that's because we all have like good technique, you know? So, but just to say that that's not like, even for me, that I feel like I don't let that be an excuse. Like I might say something like, oh, they were just like muscling me off. But like then, and I'll use that. And then I'm like, no, like I need to be like better. Like I need to make my technique sharper. I need to be like, make sure my positioning is better so that even though, because I know that there have been times where guys have tried to like outmuscle me, but I get to a position where it doesn't matter. You know, like I have beat them and my positioning is so good that I'm still winning, you know, or I could still finish whatever I was trying to do. So it's not always a case of like, oh, that person's just stronger than me. Like you just need to be better. Like work on your technique. Like don't look at what happened. Like, okay, maybe they hulked out of something or did something, but like find a way that that's not going to happen again. Like sharpen up your technique or whatever. That's kind of how I look at it.
No, I think that's good. And I think that the point of that is to say, like, you know, anytime you make an excuse for why your technique didn't work, I think is something you have to be really careful of, because I do think that that's a lie that a lot of people will tell themselves, and it's something where it'll hinder your ability to improve your own jiu-jitsu, or it may keep you from learning something. I mean, another one from, you know, I can look at myself and say, you know, there's techniques that people have shown before that I thought that I had learned, and I'm like, that one doesn't work for me. It doesn't fit into my game. It doesn't fit my style. It's better for people like this. And then somebody gives you a detail at some point, and then you're like, oh,
no, this does work.
This work.
This is great.
And it wasn't the fact that it doesn't fit your game or whatever. It's that you weren't good at it initially because you wouldn't work on it, or you came into it with an idea of, you know, it's this way.
Which is something that you are really bad about. Like, just like we've talked about this, but it's like you see something and your like creative mind is like, I think I got this. Like, I got the gist of it. I'll figure it out. Like,
I'll take it from here, Homolo.
Like, like you just like that. Like, it's a suggestion, like of how to do it, and then where I'm like, no, this is an exact thing. And then, but when you're teaching, you know that it's a very exact thing. So it's funny to me that you still do that. Although I think you've gotten better about like trying to pay more attention to the details and not just like, let's see.
And I think, you know, like, I think it's one of those things where I've gone back in history now and I can look at things that I was like, that didn't fit me. I'm not a butterfly guard player or whatever. And then being, you know, like looking back on it with like 14 years of jiu-jitsu experience and being able to be like, wait a minute, like, why can't I play butterfly guard? Like, I should be really good at butterfly guard. And like these are the situations you should probably use that in and stuff like that. And if something doesn't work for me, it's like, you know, this kind of like revelation to a certain extent of like, it's not that it doesn't work for me, it's that you suck at it, dude. Like,
just you're doing it wrong.
It's like you're just not good at it. And I think that that's something you have to be really honest with yourself. And I think that a lot of people will lie to themselves and not tell themselves that they're just not good at something.
Yeah. And I think that's something like doing any kind of like inverted guard. It's not for everybody. Like, that's not going to fit into your game. But I think people have like a misconception about what it is. And so they think, I'm never going to be able to do that. Like, that's not my bias. I was like, well, no, if you're doing it correctly, like, you're not going to hurt your neck. Like, you're not going to, you know.
It burn bubbles that way too.
Yeah, that's, I mean, you're going upside down. Like
Yeah.
anything that you're doing that, there's certain things people are, that's just not gonna be for me, or I'm not gonna be able to do that. Like don't like immediately say I can't. Like have more of an open mind about trying and figuring out, like seeing details about things, and then maybe isn't something that you're gonna apply, but learning something gives you opportunities to like see how you can defend those positions.
Yeah, and I think, you know, a lot of that comes with just improving in jiu-jitsu, and I think a lot of people will lie to themselves about their own improvements from the standpoint of, I'm not ready for the next belt, or,
Yes.
you know, like...
Or the vice versa, where they think that they're ready, and it's like, no, you're not. Like,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes you have to hold people back from themselves.
Yeah, and I think you have, you know, this group of people that are like, I'm never prepared enough, we were talking about earlier, where they're going to be like, hey, I'm not ready to be a purple belt, I'm not near as good as, and then they, in their mind, they picture the best purple belt they know. They're like, I'm not even near as good as that person. And then you have the opposite, where the person that gets tapped out 5 times in a row, and at one point they got a sweep, and they're like, only remember the sweep. That's the person that's like, I'm ready for purple belt. I sweep that one purple belt that's great all the time.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the same roll, they're getting tapped out 6 times.
Yes. I think that happens a lot. I don't know why you're so yachty today.
We're recording this in the morning, which is different for us.
But it's like hard for me to...
Hashtag Bishop Routine.
Yes, you're very much a routine person.
You are. You're a routine person.
No, I'm not.
I read the other day something about it's a sign of intelligence.
I'm a routine person.
See how I tricked you? Tricking other people is a sign of super high intelligence.
What were we saying? I just glossed.
We're just talking about like belts, like people lying
yeah.
themselves about where they should be at and those different things. And honestly, like even after you get the belt, I mean, I see it at black belt.
What do you mean?
I see black belts lie to themselves about how good different they are.
They hold up against other black belts. Yeah, I've seen that happen a lot. I think that was like, for me, it was like more of an insecurity of like, when I got my black belt, like, am I going to be able to hang? Like, am I going to be able to do this? And then my first tournament, I'm like, oh no, like, I got this. Like, I'm on the level, you know, where I can hang no matter what.
And I think that there's this lie that kind of comes along with that, where certain people don't want to find out the truth.
It's true.
And I think that I've seen that at black belt, where certain guys will have this attitude of like, yeah, you know, we're all black belts, we're all probably pretty close in skill, and that's not true.
Yeah.
But I'll also notice that they're actively making sure that they don't have to learn that sometimes.
Yeah, like I've seen that happen, because, you know, when you get that belt, you have a little bit more say in like who you're training with and that kind of thing. And so I see that happen a lot, where it's like you're trying to stop things in the middle of the rolls, so to make it, or you're making excuses before training, or you're when you're training with good people, or you're, you know, sitting out rounds and avoiding certain people because you know that they're going to be a challenge, and
I think that goes for every belt. I think that does. I think a lot of people say to themselves, well, I'm just trying to keep myself safe, or I'm just trying to roll with people that are this level or that level. And they're excuses. I mean, lies and excuses are really close together, and I think people will make all the excuses in the world to not train with somebody that's going to be difficult. And I have to say, those difficult rolls, and they're usually not the ones where you're just getting completely obliterated. No. They're the ones where the guy's just a little bit better. Those are the ones that are the toughest. Those are the ones I think are probably the most necessary a lot of times.
Yeah, you need that. You need people to push you, and you need somebody that's just gonna like beat the crap out of you. You need somebody that's gonna be like right at your level, and the person that's just like just a little bit better than you is great, because you actually have like, and you can give yourself realistic goals of like achieving what's like closer. You're gonna get closer to like beating the person that's like just a little bit better than you than you are somebody that's like just, you have no answers for them. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So
the person you have no answers for, you know, I roll with people that are a lot, you know, like still have a long ways to go in jiu-jitsu, and sometimes they'll ask me like, what can I be doing different? And it's like, just keep coming to class and getting better. Like,
Yeah.
there's no specific advice. If you have a specific question I can answer, but other than that, it's like you just need to get light years better.
Yeah.
And then there are people that, you know, like, it is, if they do ask me when we get done training, because they're like maybe a good brown belt or something like that, they may be like, what do I need to work on? And it can be like, what you're doing is you're allowing me to settle in to my knee cut pass.
Yeah.
You need to make sure that you're not just allowing people into that position.
Yeah.
Like, that is something that I can give somebody because it's closer. The difference between me being able to get that pass and not being able to get it is maybe one or two little things.
Yeah,
as opposed to it just being like, if I don't pass that way, it's going to be 10 other ways.
Yeah,
you know?
It's true. It's true. That's like a really good way of putting it. I think, I think that people, there's a lot of like things that you kind of lie to yourself about, like on the mat too, of like making excuses of what, like I trained bad one day, you know? It's like,
I'm getting worse.
I'm getting worse. Like, I don't know. Like,
I need to find a gym.
I need to make all these changes now because like you're kind of hit a plateau, or you just had one bad training, and like, man, like I'm training all the time. I have a lot of bad training days. Like, there's days where I'm like, why is my body not doing what my brain thinks, or why is my brain just empty? Like, what is going on? You know, it's just like things happen because, you know, there's a lot of different other circumstances that play into, you know, how well you might train in the
one day versus another. Or even compete.
Especially competing, you know. So that's like, and a lot of it's mental. So if you're lying to yourself, I think that's the whole point of this is like, you know, a lot of these things are very mental. And so it's like, if you can be honest with yourself and get past those like lies that you want to believe, then you can actually progress and get better. Like, but if you want to continue to lie to yourself about things, be it good or bad, like, you're probably not going to progress as fast, or maybe not at all.
And I think that's the key to all of this, is that jiu-jitsu is such a long process, you know, learning it, just the journey in jiu-jitsu. And I think you have to be really objective about it, because there's so many, all the things we're talking about, in many cases, it's like you said, like, it's mental, it's like a short-term mindset. And I think that if you can be objective and be like, I'm getting worse because you trained bad one day.
Yeah.
Like, if you look back 6 months ago, are you better than you were then?
Yeah.
Usually you can say yes.
That's something that you tell me all the time. Like, because, you know, of course on my bad days, who am I complaining to? You. So when I'm complaining about, like, I did this and I couldn't do this and I just feel like I don't have a game anymore, I feel like just lost and stuff, like, you know, a lot of the times it's when I'm, you know, working on new things. So, like, I'm not as focused on doing just, like, executing my A game in training. I'm trying to add to it, and then I get, like, just kind of lost in, or just not having as much success.
In the habit of trying
whatever. Yeah. And so then, you know, I feel bad, and you're always like, no, you're the best you've ever been. Like, what, like, did you look back? You always tell me, like, look back and see, like, but I know that you're the best you've ever been because you're always improving. And I'm like, it's probably true, but I'm still really sad about everything right now.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times what happens is, you know, when you have those bad days in training, a lot of times it comes when you're training the most.
Yeah.
And I always, like, it's like a magic thing, but it's not magic. And it's that when you have those bad days, usually, like, those moments where you're like, have that breakthrough, like, man, I'm really getting better, it's all coming together. Those days are usually really close together.
Yes.
And it's because those bad days are usually, you're either worn out, everything is just about perfect, but has flaws in it.
Yes.
And those bad days are where you kind of put it into your brain where the holes were, and then you kind of fill those in over the next few weeks or months or whatever.
And sometimes you just need a couple days off, like, give your body the rest.
Yeah, that's it too.
So that usually helps too. But I don't know, people, there's like a lot of other little lies I think everybody tells herself. I think one other thing that I had thought about is people not giving people others credit when they lose. You know? So it's like, I don't know, like, that person's not really that good, like, I just had an off day, or that person's this, and, you know, and some, or just not realizing that sometimes people are just better than you. And it's like maybe that person's just better than you in general, or maybe they just were better than you that day. And if you can't realize that, like, there's a lot of people that I'm not fans of, I would say. Like, I would say, yeah. And then, but there's no time where I'm like gonna talk trash on that person, on their technique. Like, if they've achieved, it's like, no, like, that person is really, really good. Like, you have to I can't, like, not give their props, but it's also, you, like, think a lot of people's, like, first instinct is like, well, they're not really that good. Like, and you need to make an excuse of what you did wrong, or what you did that gave them opportunities. And I was like, no, sometimes they're just better.
And I think I've learned this from doing commentary over the years, and also having the benefit of training with so many different people in jiu-jitsu, like watching the people compete against each other, having rolled with both of them, and sometimes being like, how's that guy beating that guy? I've trained with them both. That guy's way better.
Yes.
And to your point, that person doesn't have to be better than that person at jiu-jitsu.
No.
Sometimes that person is better at guillotines than the other person is at single legs, and that's the only difference.
Yeah.
And that's the only difference they needed to win that match.
Yeah. Or, like, some people just have, like, a different, like, better mindset for competition. So, like, that could be it as well. So, I think, for me, I realized in the last year or so that my mindset has been not altered is not the word I'm looking for, but influenced by other people. And I've kind of I started to lose, like, my own, like, identity and, like, my mentality, because I was, like, letting others influence, like, how I was thinking and preparing and, like, whatever. And so it's like, for me, I'm like, I have to take a step back and look at, like, okay, block out all the noise. Stop focusing on things that don't matter. Like, focus on you and being your best, and, like, getting back to how you execute.
And if you don't have, like, a really good-looking husband or a beautiful wife in your life to be able to, like, set you straight when you're, like, telling yourself these lies are going crazy, I think you have to be your own best therapist with this stuff. Like, to wrap it up, I would say, like, just be objective. And, we're talking about looking back 6 months, but also, like, when you say to yourself, I just need a new gym, or I just need this, or
I need a better training partner.
This is why I can't do that.
I can't because, all these things. Like, no, you can. Like, there's no excuse for it. You can. If you want to, you can make it happen. And
try to think of instances where you're wrong about that. So if you're like, I just need to train with people that play butterfly guard, and I'm never training with people like that. Well, like, outside of the things that you're thinking of, like, think about the last 6 months, the last 5 months. Like, have you trained with somebody that plays butterfly guard? You probably have,
Yeah.
Is that really the biggest problem right now?
Yeah.
You're probably thinking of that because there's one instance where you get swept by butterfly guard,
like,
or something like that.
You're about this butterfly guard today.
Yeah, I know, I am. It's like the one guard I can think
it's
about.
It's like an old guard. Like, not many
is.
people are. Well, I mean, I guess it is, like, relevant still.
Can't crap on butterfly guard.
I'm not gonna crap on it. Yeah. Like, it's very relevant. It's like, but it's just.
Neither of us play butterfly guard. But
I know. That's why you're talking about
I'm gonna fix that today. But yeah, I think that's the point. Is just jiu-jitsu is a really long process, and there's a lot of things that can trip you up along the way. And I think for most people, it is the things that they tell themselves. And if you can get out of your own way, you can get better.
Yeah, get out of your own way. That's the biggest thing. And we're all guilty of these things, so we're in it together. But
some of us more than others.
I am definitely not afraid to tell you if you're willing to hear, like, what you're lying to yourself about. I love to tell people what they're doing wrong.
In the comments of anything, any of the platforms where you leave comments, if you want to know what you're lying to yourself about, just ask us, and we will tell you.
Send me a message. I'll happily tell you what you're lying to yourself about.
But if you just want to just leave a comment, say, what am I lying to myself about? I will guess, and we'll tell you.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Awesome. Well, we want to thank everybody for joining us on another episode of
Not Fighting.